زور سپاس. سلام برزان، زور بخیر بیت، زور خوشحال بوم. منو کامران زور دلخوشن لره بگلاون. It's very, very nice to meet all of you. Jakam štek, zor spas po Draw Media, zor spas po Amdarfata. Thanks for hosting and inviting us. We really, really appreciate it. We've actually been wanting to do this seminar with Draw Media for a long time. And one of the reasons why is with NGO work, with human rights work, it's very important that the independent media, especially in this political context, has a strong relationship with the human rights work. Yeah. So we're going to just talk a little bit about our organization before going into our presentation. So me, Kamran, Andy, and Rebecca, we're all part of an organization called Community Peacemaker Teams. We are based, our headquarters is in the US, but we actually have 5 different teams. So obviously here we're the Iraqi Kurdistan team, and we have two proje Serekmen Heya, yak proje darbari Bordumana Iraq, Bordumana Turkiya u Irana. And our second project is about civil society, but we've been very focused on the Badinan prisoners' cases. But also we work with any journalists or activists who are impacted or are imprisoned or facing any human rights violations. A lot of our teams have kind of a similar, similar work. Our Palestine team works in the West Bank, specifically in Al Khalil or Hebron, and they are very much into observing human rights violations in the checkpoints in Palestine that kind of happen on a day-to-day basis. So they're observing the schools, the children passing through the checkpoints, or people going to pray to the mosque, and so on and so forth. And we also have a team in Colombia, we have a team in Lesbos, and we also used to have a team in Canada, but now it's mostly just volunteers. Our team here, you're here to hear from us about the Turkish military strategy and operations and its impact on civilians. But one thing first, Kamran is one of the most knowledgeable people on that topic. He's worked very, very hard on that. So Kamran's going to start us off on that.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. So nice to meet all of you here. Some of you again, and some of the people, it's my first time to meet you. Thanks for this opportunity for Draw Media. Before we are talking about the Turkish military strategy in Iraqi Kurdistan, their current strategy here, it would be great if you will talk a little bit about the stages of the operations, if you can, for the first slide. So maybe some of you know that the first Turkish military operation started in Iraqi Kurdistan in 1983. It was the intensive observation, the name was the intensive observation military operation, which started in Sidakan area. And maybe most of you know that when the first time PKK came to Iraqi Kurdistan, they entered, it was the invitation from Idris Barzani that he invited PKK to come to Iraqi Kurdistan. But in 1987, a heavy bombardment happened in Sidakan area. A lot of PKK guerrillas got killed. And beside of them, a lot of Peshmerga people that were belonging to or affiliated to KDP, Kurdistan Democratic Party, they got killed as well. So in 1987, officially KDP asked PKK to leave Iraqi Kurdistan, to not be here anymore, and their reason or their excuse was putting the Iraqi Kurdistan in danger by the presence of PKK. All the Turkish military operations, it was starting like every year, it was starting in April, and most of the time they were using artillery shelling. Sometimes they were using fighter jets to bomb Iraqi Kurdistan. In 1990s, Turkey, for the first time in 1995, they built their first military base in Grebaruch in Badinan area, which is now, it's a very, very big military base. It still exists in Kanimase, in Berwari Bala, in Badinan area. Then Turkey continued in their bombardments, but they were going a little bit further. They were using fighter jets in their bombardments. In 2007 especially, most of the Turkish fighter jet bombardments happened in 2007. After 2007, the bombardments continued, but with the help of the U.S. drone surveillances. The U.S. surveillance drones were coming, observing the area, giving the coordinations to the fighter jets, and then from Ahmed military airport, the Turkish jets were taking off and coming to Iraqi Kurdistan, and it was taking 16 minutes to come to Kandil mountains. For that time, civilian people could evacuate, because PKK had a strategy. Whenever the jet was taking off in Diyarbakir, PKK guerrillas, they knew, and they had some spies there, then they were shooting at the sky, and civilians, they were understanding that signal, and they run away. They were going to underground, they had underground protection. In Kurdish we say bala bala, bala bala. Yes, the basement. They were going there and they were protecting themselves. That's why there were not a lot of like civilian casualties. But in 2012 to 2015, when the peace process started between Turkey and PKK, Turkey used that opportunity to manufacture drones. And it was very important time for Turkey to manufacture Bayraktar drones. And there is a guy, his name is Bayrak. He's the son-in-law of Erdogan. When he came back from US studying manufacturing engineering, he came back and he manufactured a lot of drones. And the drone is Bayraktar drone, and they have Bayraktar TB1, Bayraktar TB2, Bayraktar TB3. After like this time that they were in peace process, PKK was asked to leave the Turkish Kurdistan territory in Turkey, leaving that border and come a little bit further to Iraqi Kurdistan. And there were some agreements behind of the curtain by the KRG, PKK, and also Turkey, and they had the green light by KRG to come a little bit further to Iraqi Kurdistan. After 2015, everything had been changed for the civilians. The war was more difficult, not for PKK. For PKK it was difficult, but for civilians was more difficult, because the drones were coming, targeting people, observing and targeting in the same time. People didn't have any time to run away or to evacuate. And in some areas for 24 hours the drones are still flying. People has trauma from that. When we are talking to the people in that areas, they are telling us how's like traumatized. When the like normal planes are flying over the sky, people are thinking it's drone or fighter jets coming to bomb people. It was 15, like since 1983 until now, Turkey has conducted 15 military operations in Iraqi Kurdistan, and all of that military operations had name. The last one was Claw Log operation, which was conducted or announced in April 16 last year, 2022. So I will not talk about all of these military operations, but I will talk about the civilian impacts and the areas. This is Turkish Bayraktar drone, which was manufactured. Turkey is using that drone since 2015. So this map, we made it during the Claw Lightning operation in 2021. I will explain for you how Turkey started their military operation on the ground in Iraqi Kurdistan. So for the first time in 2017, December 2017, Turkey entered Iraqi Kurdistan from Bermiza village. If you remember that people or I can be very precise about that. Lowland tribe from Bermiza, they invited Turkish soldiers to the mosque and they served them dolma in their village. So for the first time they entered Bermiza, it's a Sidakan area, it's Soran like region, Sidakan, and they entered here. They controlled all that area. They have about 15 military bases in that area. What happened there, it's not only the invasion, military invasion, taking land. It is cultural assimilation as well. How? We are very connected to that village, Bermiza. We are still going to that village. When you are arriving the area, you will lose the connection, Asyasal and Korak Telecom. You will receive a message and it's saying, welcome to Turkey, goodbye from Iraqi Kurdistan. Kurdish people in that village, they are all Kurdish people. They are from Bradost like tribe. You know, they are relatives of Khani Labzaren, if you have heard about Dimdim, you know, Qalai Dimdim. So they are their relatives. So these people, they are Kurdish. But the new generation, 2017, like after 2017, their kids cannot speak in Kurdish very well. They all speak in Turkish. When they are speaking, they have difficulties with their older generation. They are using a lot of Turkish words because they are watching Turkish media a lot. The Kurdish, media, it's restricted in that area. It's very difficult for them to listen to the Kurdish media, listening to the radio. So when we are talking to their older generation, their parents, they are saying, we have difficulties from understanding each other. We cannot understand each other very well. Every month, Turkish soldiers are coming down from these mountains. They are going to the village, and they are giving 1 kilogram of rice to each family with the Turkish flag. And it's something that the media hasn't covered yet. Like the media is not aware of that because also media cannot go to that area. They have internet, but it's very difficult. Like it is also, the signal is very weak in that area. When we are going there, we always have Korak Telecom. Asyasal for sure, it's not working. For Korak Telecom also, it's not working very well. You have to go to a little bit high mountains to get the signal. It's very difficult for the people. Then Turkey started a new operation. So it was Sidakan operation. They started claw operations. Like it was some claw operations. I will give you a brief about that. So,
excuse me, just Sidakan is a part of Erbil?
yes. So no. Sidakan is belonging to Soran. Soran is belonging to Erbil governorate. And this is the triangle between Iraq, Iran, Turkey. Like it's Kelashin. I think you have, like everyone has heard about Kelashin. Here is Kelashin. So then in 2018, they started a new operation in the beginning of 2018. They controlled that area. So maybe you have heard about Serzire toll gate. Serzire is the like cross-border checkpoint between Turkey and also Iraqi Kurdistan. People are using for trade and some people just for traveling they are using here. So they controlled that area as well in 2018. A lot of villagers evacuated. They left their areas. Then in 2019, they had first claw operation, then second claw operation, but it was aerial operation. It was not on the ground, but it continued for a long time, and it started in January 23rd of 2019. If you remember, Skis fishermen, they were in Deraluk, they were fishing Gali Rashava like river. They were fishing and they got bombed. 4 of them, they were killed. 2 of them, their bodies hasn't been found yet. So it was the first, like when they announced the operation Discus people, they were all civilian people and they got killed. Then in 2020, they announced or conducted Claw Eagle operation and Claw Tiger operation. It was during the pandemic. Claw Eagle operation it was aerial operation, and Claw Tiger operation, it was on the ground. I can say it is the most difficult and heaviest military operation it ever happened in Iraqi Kurdistan. How it started, they came here, their aim was Haftanin area, and they cleaned the whole area from civilians, and they all left it. their villages. They moved to Zaho, they moved to Shiladze, they moved to Duhok, but it was very difficult, and Begova as well. It was very difficult for the civilians because like they were saying, our lifestyle has been changed. We want to live in the mountains. We don't want to come to the cities. We want to be with our like relatives. We cannot be with them anymore. It was very difficult for them. And here is Kashan village. We have like some evidences that the Turkish soldiers, when they first entered that village, they were looting. They were going to the houses. Whatever they could take, they were taking, like gold or anything. Whatever they could not take, they were just shooting. For example, television, the fridge, all of this stuff, they were just shooting at the house. And the Turkish soldiers, they didn't know that it can be found by organizations or media. They were taking, like they were recording video, selfie, and they were publishing on their Instagram and also Facebook. And it was found later how they did that. They controlled all of that area, and then for the next year, they announced a claw lightning operation. So claw lightning operation was, their target was Barwari Bala area, and also Avashin area. Why Turkey wanted to do that? To get their strategy, their tactic was connecting all that area together and making a buffer zone, and connecting that with Rojava as well. Then like it would be their territory. It's what they are calling for, like Ottoman Empire land. They wanted to like connect all of that area together, and PKK will not have any space anymore. Then they could control that area, but they could not control here, Avashin, in 2021. They could not control here. But for the next year, they announced a claw log operation that Julian will tell you more about that. But before we are talking about claw log operation, I want to give you some data. So we as CPT, we have data from August 2015 until now, how many people have been killed, how many people have been injured because of the Turkish cross-border military operations. 143 people, at least 143 people has been killed because of the Turkish cross-border military operations in Iraqi Kurdistan. 158 people have been injured because of the Turkish cross-border military operations in Iraqi Kurdistan. Maybe Julian will tell you more about our new project. And now we have a project collecting all the data from 1990 until now. How many people have been killed, how many people have been injured. We are collecting all their documents, death certificate, their picture, everything. Because we had some meetings with the Iraqi government, we want to get compensation for these people. One thing I want to share about that, during collecting this data, we heard some stories that are very heartbroken, like it's never being told, that stories. For example, in Sune village in Pishdar area, a woman, she was breastfeeding. She was breastfeeding to her like baby. The bombardment happened, and they could not, like they both got killed. They put both of them in the grave together because they could not separate them from each other. It is one of the very most difficult one. Another story in Sidakan area, a woman, she was giving a birth, and the widow was there as well, like the person who's helping. Midwife was there, and the bombardment happened while she was giving the birth. So we have a lot of stories, like a family, 30 family members got killed in Sidakan area. Civilian? They were all civilian. We as CPT, we are only collecting data from civilian people. Another story that I want to share with you is in Hero village in Pishdar area again. Iran was bombing in 1998. A civilian or a villager said, I have a bus, let's leave the village, let's evacuate. And people said, no, we don't want to evacuate. Like, if we will die, we want to die in our own village. And the guy, he was like encouraging people, let's leave. And then like the bus was the place for 21 people, but 23 people, they went to the bus. They left at the village. It was a heavy bombardment inside of the village. For 1 hour they drove from Hero to Jarawa. They wanted to get Rania. When they got Jarawa bridge, the bombardment happened on that bridge. They targeted that bus. All the people who were trying to evacuate from bombardment, they all got killed. And that story is never being told. Yeah.
Cameron, do you share this kind of story with the media, especially you have like this tragic photos and documents? So do you have like any kind of connection with the media to share this story, and this story should be told?
Yeah. Definitely, we have some reporters. We are writing articles as well, and sometimes we have press conferences. We are sharing that, but this kind of stories we found it recently because with a new project, because we were not aware about the bombardments in 1990s. Now we are trying to like disclosing that and also writing about them, documenting them, and also sharing. For sure, we will share all of these stories in future. Yeah.
How do you define this kind of act? You know, I mean, according to the international law, you know, I mean, Iraq is a sovereign state.
Yeah.
How do you define this act? You are as an organization?
I think it's that we as CPT, we are identifying as like it's a terror. It's a terror attack or military operation. Like terror is not just a group that hasn't been legally identified. It's not like that. When you are targeting civilian, it's the war crime. What Turkey is doing, targeting civilian people, like there is no excuse for that because people are in their house. There were not any PKK guerrillas there. We have some stories. For example, in June 27, 2019, on Kurtagrot, a PKK commander got targeted and they killed him, Haval Halmat. I think his name is Haval Halmat, Diyar Gharib. In that bombardment, it was a guy from Ashqulqa village in Kandil. He was coming back from his village after like planting or farming in his village. For a half hour, a Turkish drone was following the PKK commander car, but not targeting. Like it was not bombing. They were waiting until this PKK car just come close to the civilian car. When it tried to pass the civilian car, they bombed them together. That's in 2019. Yeah.
It's like the one in Kunamasi.
Exactly. Yeah. So Turkey is doing that for giving a message to the Iraqi Kurdistan people to say the presence of PKK here is putting your life in danger. And there is a reality in it. But it's not like that. Like they are targeting them together. This car that came to Kunamasi, it drove from Penguin. Like it was the whole way without civilian, they could bomb that car. But Turkey is bombing both of them together, yeah, in the same time. So we will announce the data, hopefully in few months, like the new data from 1990. It is Iranian and also Turkish bombardments, how many people have been killed and injured. We have that as well, the wild animals, how many wild animals have been killed or, yeah. So it's very difficult to get a data, but we did a very intensive investigation about that. We found out that since 2007 to 2022, 2,500 wild animals have been killed because of the bombardments, and it's a real picture actually. Like it's not this just 2 days being died. It's not like that. It's from 2020 actually. We got that picture. It's from Mergasor area when they bombed an agricultural land. And also from 2007 until 2022, 1,800,000 agricultural dönum, like the dönum, I don't know how's that in hectare. Yeah, yes, yeah. So 1,800,000 dönums have been burned because of the bombardments.
1 dönum equal to 2,500 meters.
Yeah, yeah. Displacement. So whenever the bombardment is happening, most of the people being displaced. Like a lot of people are leaving their villages. It's one of the villages, it's called Zeuka village. It's from Kandil area, Kandil Highlands, Pishder district. So in 2019, September 2019, they conducted a lot of bombardment over the night. And in the morning, all the people left their village. They came down to the feet of the mountain. There was a river there. And we visited people. Maybe Kakshwan know about that village. He's working for ICRC. Maybe he visited that village as well. So when we were talking to the people, people were in the tent and they could see their village. There's a woman there. We interviewed her. She was saying, we said, drones are still flying and there's still like a potential risk, maybe that river also being bombed and you would be killed. And she was saying, I would prefer when I will die, I will see my village. Every day when I'm waking up, it's been for whole of my life, I live it here. I don't want to live here. But unfortunately, in November, that river got flooded. And people were forced to go to Kaladze, to not stay in that area anymore. And students were studying under the tents. And one of the things is, we were very surprised that Puraish, that she's an older woman, she told us, Turkey is bombing us. And in the same time, they are giving us tents to be there. It was, that tents were from TRC, Turkish Red Crescent. Yeah. And we were surprised that we had a discussion with Kakshwan. I said, why this organization is giving them? Like it's written there, Turkish Red Crescent. I said, why they are giving them? Maybe it's not their mandate. Maybe their mandate is something else, but they are giving them. But actually, they gave that tents through Barzani Charity Foundation because they were the first organization who entered the area and they gave them these tents. How many villages have been emptied or displaced because of the bombardments? Since 1983, 158 villages are completely displaced. There is no civilian, no one in that villages. But we have 580 villages are under the threat of being displaced. When we are saying that, what do we mean? We mean we have a village, for example. In the past, 50 families were living there. But now only one family is remaining. It's not completely displaced, but it is under the threat to be, yes, exactly. So it is 580 villages are under the threat of being completely displaced. And they are mostly from Sidekan area and Avashin area, Avashin and Zap, Shiladze. We have these students. We took that pictures, by the way. We went there and they were studying like that. They were under the tent. And one of the students, she had a message. She said, if you will go back, you are here with the Americans. Please tell them to listen or watch that video that I'm sending to them. So this is the video.
من برسياركم هاي لا من دالاني أمريكا لنا وخيوتي هو دادجين.
Yeah, she's saying, I have a question. Yeah, I have a question. Are the students from US are living in the tents like that? Yeah, studying. Dajin, I think she said Dajin. Yeah. 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 So then that girl, her name is Hani. It's the same one. In November, when the river got flooded, they left it and they were forced to go to Kaladze, and she was crying. When they were leaving their area, she was crying, and the teachers were trying to help her to get out from the area. Yeah. Now Julian can continue. He's talking about claw log operation.
So Zospas Cameron. And I just wanted to expand something on this, one of the stories that Kamran was just sharing about the drone strike that targeted a civilian from the Ashkulka village. So this Mamusta Muhammad was traveling with his family, his wife, his brother, his parents, and his 2 kids. After the bombardment struck, or after the drone strike struck, and they were, he described that he flew in the air with the steering wheel like 20 meters into the air, and he also described how, his father had been completely beheaded by the drone because of the drone strike, and so on and so forth. But actually, after that, He described seeing like a laser in the sky after the drone strike already had happened, and seeing a red laser and then a fire happening again on his car. So not only did they wait for the vehicle to be close to the PKK vehicle, they also came back and struck them again. So it's a thing to expand on the civilian impact. So Claw Lock operation just happened almost over a year ago to this day. And as Kamran had already mentioned, they had tried to take over this area in Claw Lightning operation, yeah? And so actually, kind of by coincidence, we as CPT were driving to Shiladze to visit some partners for our other project. And on April 17th of last year, they started this military operation. So as you can see, they were in the Zap mountain area, the Avanshin area mountain, and the Kurajaro area. They conducted their military operation, and that includes ground forces. So they were sending their special operations forces and so on and so forth. And as you can see from these, there was also a lot of bombardments. And a lot of these very, very close to villages or in the very, very close proximity to villages. And one thing important to mention, as we were, so we were in Shiladze, and we were just having lunch, we saw a huge convoy of vehicles. I mean, it might have been 20, 30 vehicles that were most likely on their way to assist in the operations. And yes, and so Kamran mentioned a really good point. What is the objective, right? And so it's the same objective. It's to create a buffer zone that's, this next map will...
Just one thing I want to add. Yes. The convoy, the cars, they didn't have any plate number, and they were black windows, and they were escorted by very heavy, like, military force.
Exactly. And so just kind of to demonstrate here, with these controlled areas, they don't have this area quite yet, but it's to create this buffer zone, as Kamran had already mentioned, to get to connect to Rojava. But there's another thing that's interesting about that. They're also building roads that are going back into Turkey, like military roads so that they can continue more easily, let's say, move their military troops, their ground forces, so on and so forth, to connect back into Turkey. So this is the Turkish Bayraktar drone that was the first time it was really used was in Cloud Lock operation, and it's a very, very highly advanced drone. It can target underwater. It has very, very high precision technology. It even has very high signal intelligence technology, like U.S. military uses that kind of stuff a lot. And even they were using this when the earthquake happened. They were using these drones to like assess, to even see if people are like alive or gathering like intel and information in that way. So that kind of gives you a really good idea of the capacity of these drones. Like they're very, very highly capable, very, very precise. And the precision should also be informative of, like it's not by coincidence that they're attacking civilians, right? These are very, very highly precise drones. Like it's not by accident. These are things that are more than likely done on purpose. So to continue about Cloud Lock operation, so in the Avanshin area, Kamran talked already about the amount of displaced villages. So in the Avanshin area where it was conducted, 82 out of 92 villages have been displaced. And the other 10 are somewhat partially displaced. And in Parache, and I think Herure is just close to just a little bit over here. These are the Parache and Herure, which is just right here. We have a good relationship with the Herure village. If you might have remembered in Parkhed, that was where the bombardment happened, where 9 Arab tourists were killed, including 1 woman and 1 child of last year. And Herure, which is very, very close to the border, is like we just visited them last year. And those two, that village is one of the last remaining villages. And when we visit them and we're going, like, they describe it as being like in a prison, you know, because there's Turkish bases surrounding the entire village, and sometimes to, you know, threaten them or try to scare them, they might be shooting, or they'll fire a random bombardment in close area to one of their houses in a way to try to scare them to get them to leave, because they're the last remaining village, and it's a very strategic area for Turkey. Very, very strategic, but they are resisting. They're like, you know, we'll die on this land. We're not going to leave. But it's getting harder and harder. You know, they're building more military bases. And the other thing about these expansions, right? As they're expanding, they're also building more military bases, right? And with more military bases, there's a higher likelihood of aggression. We hear stories all the time about, you know, a firing from the base, and things, people going into the mountains, or going on a picnic and, you know, hearing and getting shot at by one of the bases, right? So Herure is one of the last remaining villages, but like I said before, it's getting increasingly more difficult because they have very, very little help. One other thing I want to mention. In the Avenshin area, you'll notice that this area is not highlighted. And that's not by chance. And one of the reasons that is because this is the Barzan area. And Masoud Barzani is from this area. And you can probably guess the reasons why that area might not, it might be a safe place, might not be targeted. But it's an interesting thing because we've driven through that area. You can hear the drones flying over all the time. And the interesting thing that happens because of that is this actually becomes the safest area for PKK. Because as you can see, here, it's all occupied by Turkish military forces. There's really no other place to go. And although it's very dangerous, it's still very, very safe, relatively safe, let's say. Yeah? So that's an important thing to mention. And also with Shiladze, about the data collection, you know, that area has been under threat of bombardments for a very, very long time. So when I was talking about Avenshin, it's not because of this military operation that those villages have been displaced. It's a perpetual escalation of bombardments. It's not just from this operation specifically. We have a story actually that we just found out about. One of our volunteers told us about there's this woman in the late 90s. She's from close to Shiladze, if I remember correctly. And her hand looks like it was completely burned by acid. And what happened was Turkey dropped the barrel bombs, and they put the acid in them to create a more impact, right? And this is a heavily invested civilian area. So barrel bombs for one I think might be illegal under international law even, the use of it, especially in civilian areas. But to combine that with acid can maybe speak volumes about the intention. So for the next slide, I kind of want to go into what's going on more recently. So here you kind of see the last 3-4 years, the operations. And here it's important to note, this is a Turkish drone base. Now we can't say for sure, these are strikes that have happened in this past year. We can't say for sure this is where they're coming from, but I mean, if it's not coming from here, it's probably coming from very, very close. And so, as you can see, it's very close to the cloud lightning. So as they're expanding, it's like an incremental expansion. You know, it's connected to this, maybe it's connected to Ottoman Empire ideology, whatever, so on and so forth. But this expansion doesn't mean just to leave. It's continuing to build these military bases, which are oftentimes very, very close vicinity to villages. And that's something that we're very, very worried about. Because, for example, there hasn't been an official military operation this year. But 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, there's been 7 different strikes just in this year. And as you can see, none of these are close to any of these military operations. And that's something that should be very, very telling. So for example, in the beginning of the year, there was an attack in Khalifa village. I forget how many, Khalifan, sorry. Khalifan village. I'm sure all of you know about the very, very recent one at the Slimani airport. Back in March, there was an attack in Chamchamo. In April, in Ardel village, 2 villagers were killed while they were harvesting wild mushrooms. And there was also one in Shekhan village. And all the way, even in Penjuin, there were drone strikes. The villagers were describing hearing the buzzing, the flying of the drones. It's a very distinct sound, yeah? And look how far away that is from this border. So it's something that we're very, very concerned about as this incremental expansion is happening. As you can see, this incremental military expansion is happening in the building of more and more bases. And it's not just this year that these bombardments have been happening in close vicinity to cities, right? We have a partner where they were hit by a drone just outside of Slimani. And these are happening currently. But this year specifically, there's not really been any. There's actually just one, 4 or 5 days ago in Galala, which is just about here. So as CPT, one of the things that we're really afraid of is that they are going to continue these operations because they've been incremental. They are going to start going further and further into the cities. So as you can see, Soran is very close. Rania is very close. Kaladze, Acre, Duhok. I mean, Amedi is very, very close already to being occupied under the Turkish military. And there's no consequences for this expansion. There's nothing being done against it. They're not feeling, as long as it's incremental, there's not any international steps being taken, and that's probably quite on purpose. But this freedom, this targeting of civilian areas is. The likelihood of a civilian being impacted is very, very high in these kinds of areas. I mean, Penjuin, Slimani, obviously at an airport, very, very easily for a civilian to be impacted. Chamchamo, obviously, in the 2 villagers in the Ardel village. So as CPT, that's something that we're very, very worried about, that in its next military operations, they're going to expand even more. Now, you'll notice it's already May, and there hasn't been a military operation. Cameron already mentioned that usually every year, maybe because of the weather, the seasons, around this time a military operation takes place. Probably one of the fundamental reasons why that's happening is because of the elections. Erdogan's up for re-election. It's looking a little shaky. Who knows what's going to happen? So it seems like to garner more support, especially from the Kurdish constituency in Turkey, since he really needs those votes, that they're not conducting any operations at the moment to aggravate the Kurdish population in Turkey.
So you want to say that Turkish military can reach any location or any place in Iraqi Kurdistan?
Any place in Iraqi Kurdistan? Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's been numerous times in Slimani that we've heard I'm sure even one of you have heard the drones going overhead. The military bases, there's a lot of military bases. All of these areas that are marked, there's a lot. And there's not just one, it's not just 2. There's more than 20, even more than that.
They reached the airport.
It's kind of more of this incremental expansion, yeah? Like the effort to get to Soran, the effort to get to Acre, the effort to get to Rania, it wouldn't take a lot of effort. And not only that, what is usually the main excuse? Well, there's PKK, yeah? And as we've mentioned to you already, oftentimes it's not, there's not any PKK in the area. There's not anything close to PKK in the area, but that's always excuse. It's a very easy excuse, yeah? It's a very, very easy excuse.
And that way they make the people hate the
Exactly. Bilfal.
They seeded that. So
Bilfal. And as you mentioned, as Kamran mentioned, that's the strategy because you already feel people who've lost relatives, they lost family members. I mean, like the story that Kamran had mentioned about Malam Muhammad, I mean, his sister died, his father died, his 2 children were able to survive, but the injuries that they sustained. And not only that, the injury he has sustained, it's very hard for him to work now. He has, because he doesn't receive compensation from the Iraqi, the KRG, or from the Iraqi federal government, even though in the legislation, in the law, all family members who are impacted by a foreign, outside of Iraq, if they're killed or injured, they should have received compensation from the Iraqi federal government or the KRG. They have not received anything, none of these families. And so the impact, and after your family has been killed or your relatives, you can imagine how you would feel unsafe around PKK. Maybe you don't want to associate. You would ask them to leave your village. It's very, very, you can understand why they would feel that way. So Kamran had already mentioned our new project about the data collection. And so we've, one of the, I'll just briefly surmise what he already said. One of the things that we went with some families to into Baghdad with some of our partners. And the Iraqi federal government promised us to, promised the families to compensate any family or any individual who has been impacted, injured, or killed by any Turkish bombardment. But we need very, very precise documentation. We need very, very precise data. We need documentation, anything that can help the case. And so obviously this is an enormously expansive area. So we've been very, very fortunate and lucky to have some amazing volunteers who know the area better than we could ever know. To be collecting that data. But one of the things that we were very surprised about is like Kamran already mentioned some of the stories, but I think the number you had calculated yesterday, Kamran, was around 500 to 600, almost 700 people might have been casualties. So it's a lot more actually than we thought, but we'll need to gather and go through all the documentation. But yes. So yeah.
Okay.